Welcome to Mentally Strong Mums. My podcast connects with other mums just like you. Be honest when we all struggle and inspire you to feel mentally strong. Be the best version of yourself by loving your authentic self. Then teach this understanding to your kids. Knowledge is power. I want you to be powerful. As a social worker in private practice with the foundation of a psychology degree, I use a holistic approach so you can support your unique situation. So please join me, Alina, at Supportive Therapy and our community of beautiful everyday mums. Hello everyone, my name is Alina Bishop. Thank you so much for being here today and listening to my podcast. So today's podcast is what is youth abuse towards parents or adolescent abuse towards parents. So if you haven't heard of this before, yes, it is a real and typically unspoken hidden concern. So you know someone with children or blended families with children 12 years old to 20 years old and have suspected something that's not quite right. This may be that gold nugget that puts all the pieces together. For those of you who are not familiar, you may be thinking, but they're just kids. How much damage can they do? How do their parents let this happen? Okay. The approximate statistics suggest only 7% of parents actually speak up when this happens to them. And during COVID lockdown and all of that, it actually increased by 20%. So that's hypothesized, obviously, because it doesn't come, it's not well documented. And no, we've got this awful assumption that they're just trouble kids or people from like lower socioeconomic backgrounds. But really, this can be any teenager at home on their devices late at night from any, like no one is immune from this. You imagine a teenager at home at night on their devices. Mum keeps asking them, get off, turn it off, sleep time, go to bed. No. Huge fights. And then next thing you know, she's had enough. She turns off the Wi-Fi and then bam, that's generally when it can kind of escalate. Yeah, awful. So we've got a significant lack of information on parental abuse. So this reflects the societal attitudes which actually blame parents and carers for the violent behaviour of their adolescent children. So there is a profound sense of shame that will go through this behaviour from the parent who thinks in that moment or during the situation or after the situation that they are not able to parent properly. And from the young person, they're really quite worried about others finding out. So especially in that moment when there is like a huge eruption or there is some kind of abuse that's going on, the child, we're going to say child or adolescent, maybe that's probably a better word. So their goal, whether it's conscious or unconscious, is power and control. It's a huge motivation behind their behavior. So abuse is any behavior used by a young person to control, dominate, or coerce their parents in any way. It's intended to threaten and intimidate and ultimately puts the family safety at risk. While this is normal for adolescents to demonstrate healthy anger, especially those who possess testosterone, conflict and frustration during their transition from childhood into adulthood, so this is finding their way, finding their voice, being able to stand up to authority. Anger should not be confused with violence. This is not acting out. So yes, you're allowed to be angry. Everyone is allowed to be angry. But when it turns to aggression and when it turns to violence, it's too far. It's not acceptable. Anger, yes. Aggression, too far. So most abused parents have difficulty admitting even to themselves that their child is abusive. So they feel ashamed and really disappointed and deeply humiliated. Because they are the parents, they then blame themselves for the situation. So, which has led to this power imbalance within the family dynamics. There's also in this element of denial. So look at things now from the child's perspective so we can understand what's going on in the motivation in an adolescent. So teenage logic, yes, you guessed it, brain and logic has not fully developed, okay? The frontal lobe, which is above the forehead, you can point to it with your finger. So your frontal lobe above your forehead, point to it, is responsible for impulse control, decision making, reasoning, and understanding consequences. This doesn't fully develop until 25. Imagine that. So mixed with dependence on the amygdala. So the amygdala, fun word, can't say it, right? Your amygdala is base of your brain, which is associated with emotions, aggression, and instinctive behavior. So remember those times when you watch kids doing reckless, ridiculous, silly stunts and you think, what are you doing? What are you thinking? They're literally not thinking. They don't have the capacity to understand consequences. So when they do something and you're like, what are you thinking? They're not thinking because they're motivated by their emotions. If they're angry, they're going to act out on their anger. If they're happy, they're going to act out on their happiness. It takes them a long time to be able to get their frontal lobe and their thinking, their reasoning, their decision making, their consequences to the party because it's not evolved, because it hasn't developed yet. So imagine that mixed with hormonal changes, okay? Perhaps because of the relative ease of the hormonal levels, it's tempting to attribute to adolescent behavioral changing to raging hormones. Have you heard of that? The raging hormones, okay? An important aspect of this distinction between hot and cold cognition. So hot cognition refers to conditions of high emotional arousal or conflict. So this is often the case of riskiest adolescent behavior. And when it is risky like this, because of their hormone changes, it's hot cognition, which means they're motivated by their emotions, but they're unable to understand the consequences of their behavior. So in terms of behavioral changes as well, number one, they get bored and they want to do new things. Two, there's an increased risk taking, especially with males. And three, there's a social affiliation shift towards peer-based interactions. So this means essentially they want to go away from the family and they want to be able to go towards their peers and whatever their peers are doing. So if the peers are all online, up late doing this, and the family says no, they're going to automatically align to the peers and then try and do anything to get power and control over the family to align with the peers. So you can understand how it kind of can begin quite innocently and in their little egocentric kind of minds. That's just what they want to do. And I want to do that. And why can't I do that? Why aren't you letting me do that? But obviously in a household, the way that the family unit runs, there's rules and boundaries. So then how can everyone get together formally with having respect, especially when an adolescent feels they're the ones that's powerless. So when a person feels powerless, that's when they feel like they need to gain control back. And sometimes when they want to have control back, especially in that environment, it can turn to abusive. So I just want to quickly, abusive is a massive, huge word. So I just want to quickly break it down on what it means, the different categories of abuse, and understand exactly what's happening if an adolescent is doing this towards you as a parent, as a mum, or even abuse towards other siblings. And then obviously it makes it really quite complicated if they're step families or if the grandparents are carers, and what does that look like? So abusive, okay? Number one, physical. Physical can be hitting, punching, shoving, kicking, spitting, throwing things, right? Breaking things, punching holes in walls, abusive and bullying behavior to other siblings. Also, tragically, can be cruelty to pets. So that could be part of bribes or whatever that is, okay? Number two, abusive verbal abuse. Yelling, screaming, swearing in an abusive manner. Also making intimidating comments. Three, psychological abuse. Playing mind games, threatening to run away, hurt themselves, or whatever that kind of thing is. It's just like a psychological minefield. Awful, right? Number four, lies to control. So that could be taunting. So some really hardcore example would be, I'm going to set the house on fire with blah, 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 blah. I'm not getting into that. But yeah, that's lies to control the situation and obviously manipulating. This is instilling fear and intimidation to get control. 5, emotional. Put downs, making you feel awful, you're a horrible mum, you ruined my life, all that kind of stuff. Emotional blackmail, playing mind games, trying to make you think that you're crazy, making threats to run away. Obviously, I'm calling child protection mum. Hurt or kill themselves just to get their way, right? Financial abuse, demanding money or purchases that you can't afford, stealing money that could be out of your wallet or cards or possessions, and then purchasing things to get you into debt that you have to then pay. There's also an element of sexual abuse as well. I don't really want to go into that, but if you do have any concerns or if this is triggering for you, I need you to contact me. You're not alone. I need you to reach out to someone, okay? Just so far. It gets better, I promise. All right. So we also need to know about some additional motivations behind some of the behaviour that can kind of exacerbate situations and make it worse. So obviously substance misuse. So they may be more aggressive and show less remorse when they're using drugs and alcohol. Mental illness. So there's a PIPA project, a positive intervention for perpetrators of adolescent violence in the home, PIPA. So there's 47% of researchers found evidence of adolescents having a diagnosis that would equate to psychosocial or cognitive disability. So that's obviously a huge factor to play in as well. So if you're thinking almost 50% of these adolescents who are engaging in this behavior towards their parents potentially have a psychosocial or cognitive disability. I'm dyslexic, by the way, so sometimes some of my stuff doesn't come out. But yeah, the PIPA project, absolutely huge. So also 23 of these cases, the adolescents were recorded as being on the autism spectrum, and so having a cognitive impairment sufficient was to impact their capacity to comprehend or comply with their parents or even the police orders. And so that's obviously a really difficult thing as well moving forward, because we need things to get better, we need people to comply. Another factor is trauma and loss. So trauma and loss can be things like war, migration, death within a family, death within friends, death of a parent, family separations, illness and grief. And so all of this impacts and affects how a child develops. It also impacts how they cope with stress or conflict, and they make decisions and handle their emotions. And obviously children are motivated by their emotions. So then how does that impact, and how can you can see why that happens? If a family experiences family violence, and children especially who experience family violence may be more at risk of using violence themselves, particularly if they are male children. They may begin to see violence as a normal and accurate way of communicating or resolving conflict. And that's because you see it all the time. So if I see it all the time, it's actually normalized for me, and now I'm desensitized to all of that violence and conflict. So children or adolescents, same as adults, they use violence to gain a temporary sense of control and power in an out of control situation where they feel powerless or worthless. Okay? One little additional guide that you just want to throw in there is also sexist attitudes. So common attitudes in our society allow males, including young men, to feel they are entitled to control women in the household. And so because this podcast is designed for mums, we want to be able to understand how this impacts mums. So this isn't any thing negative or blanket or stereotypical or anything. This is just another little explanation of if an adolescent has been exposed to sexist attitudes, how this directly impacts on a mother. So, physical strength and dominance are seen as defined qualities of being a man in those sexist attitudes if it has been displayed from a father to a son, and so how that then impacts the mother. So such attitudes and peer pressure can encourage macho behavior in boys, and especially sometimes if the dad says derogatory, awful comments, which I'm obviously not going to say, to the boy, he then, even if he doesn't really want to, needs to feel that he has to conform with this kind of behavior, and then carries it out to be the alpha and protected by the father. So yeah, as sad as it is, men's violence towards women teaches children to be disrespectful to their mother and undermines her authority. It's awful as a mother when you feel like this. Children who grow up in these abusive attitudes unchallenged are more likely to abuse and use violence against their mother. So there's also additional attitudes of over entitlement. So some children just see it as their parents' job to make them happy, and that's it, at any cost, with no responsibility. So this over entitlement, like the parents are there to serve. Also, interestingly, another factor could be temperament of the child. So personality traits such as being quite stubborn, impulsive, or combative. So they could also be contributing factors. So even though I have just given you a quick rundown of these factors that may contribute to the violence against mothers within home, these factors do make abusive behaviour more likely, more severe or hard to control. But it's so important to remember that none of these things cause violence, okay? And none of these things are excuses for violence, and none of these things that I've been talking about makes it acceptable for violence to happen. So just because this is this, yeah, of course I'm going to get violence. No, absolutely not. So really, how do the parents feel? How about our beautiful mothers when they're in this situation feeling so helpless at any age? So you imagine from the age of 12 to 20. Honestly, mums, ashamed, guilty, embarrassed, feel like a failure. All they really want to do is trying to protect their family so that this doesn't get out. That's why only 7% are actually reported, and that's what they assume because of the guilt, the shame, the embarrassment. This is such a big secret to protect someone who's hurting you, and it just so happens the person who's hurting you is my child. So because of this, you don't really want to exacerbate any situation, or you don't want to accidentally set them off. So their mums are like permanently walking on eggshells. So it's almost like you're being trapped with a cage lion, especially if they're at home the majority of the time. So it can also sometimes turn to like a bit of an obsession to keep this little dirty secret in-house. So when we do that, it leads to isolation and self-blame and then depression. So when this happens, because we're trying to keep the secret because we don't want it to get out, it can be a perpetual state of anxiety, resulting just in trauma for mums, and how awful it is, okay? For mums, there's a profound sense of shame that will go through this behaviour from the parents because they feel like they're not able to parent properly because of the behaviour of their children. And from the young person who's worried about others finding out. So, which then is a mother's guilt cycle of not reporting the abuse. It's really sad. I love my mums and I want to be able to support you as much as I can in any capacity. And if you're listening to this, you probably know this is either you or someone out there. So I want to be able to make you feel validated and seen and heard with everything that you're experiencing. So because of this little dirty secret that's been going on, whether you want to talk about it or not, I want to let you know now, you living in this situation, these are the potential current and long-term mental health impacts that directly impact mum. So it can impact negatively on your self-esteem. And when that happens, it's going to increase the risk of depression. It also increases the risk of isolation, and isolation is absolutely awful. It can then impact on the attachment of other children. So if you've got other younger children, and how does that impact on your attachment onto them and bonding with them and all of that. Privately, you may then question your ability as a mum, my own parenting styles, and my own perceptions of a failure, and then leading to self-blame, which is just awful. Some parents blame themselves for their children treating them aggressively. Also, it can feel like war zone circumstances. So with a lot of different people, mothers that have been involved in these kind of studies, there's been descriptions such as walking on eggshells in the home, living in a war zone, being consciously in this anxious state of flight or fight freeze mode. And then if you didn't hear my previous podcast about fawn, and fawning's just groveling and apologising and giving in and being numb, can lead to chronic anxiety and trauma. So trauma is any event that overwhelms your ability to cope on its own. So, and then can eventually lead to PTSD. Also, the pressures and guilt of dobbing on your child can have long-term and permanent implications that can impact their future that the mother generally tends to feel responsible for. So if she doesn't want to dob on the child because then they may be on your permanent record and then they want to go to uni or whatever that looks like, the mum doesn't want the guilt of tainting their record, so she'll just keep it a secret. So that's essentially once a child becomes labelled by the courts or a service as a perpetrator, they can potentially be excluded from key supports such as crisis accommodation or even out-of-home care because of their use of violence against others. So adolescents who use violence are also vulnerable in other ways, such as being dependent on adults for housing or finances. So it's an awful situation to be in as well, which obviously the mother is aware of, so that impacts on her decision if she's going to get help or keep it a secret. So there's also a fear that reporting would risk criminalisation of the adolescents or having other children removed. Imagine that, if you were really scared if this happens and then the other kids get removed. So this was a particular concern in the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities, for whom involvement in child protection authorities and legal system agents more broadly carried an additional layer of compounded trauma and fear. And you can imagine that there's absolutely no way, if I had that fear, that I would be calling anyone. So I don't know if you know CALD. CALD is culturally and linguistically diverse communities. It's not widely recognised as a concept. So including trauma from migrant or refugee experiences may be far more relevant than any other particular cultural context. So for our beautiful mums, if you know someone or assume that someone may be going through this, or if you yourself are going through this, you need to be empathetic and put yourself in their shoes. Just put your own shoes on, honey. See and understand, acknowledge, and be compassionate for how you're feeling. So this then helps barriers that have prevented them from asking them for help in the past. And it also reinforces that you need to be patient and work at the pace of the mum. So it was really the mum's decision. She needs to feel supported and loved as opposed to be blamed and ostracised, okay? So some of the beliefs that the mother may have now is I'm totally alone. I'm unable to share this problem, even with my closest friends, because I don't want the judgment. I love my child. I just want the violence to stop. I've been undermined by my abusive adolescent and lost the respect of my family. It's all my fault. It's my child and I have created this behaviour. How can I admit that one of my children is abusing me? I'm so ashamed. I'm scared. Is this a passing phase or will it get worse? I feel powerless and I can't see how to fix this problem. I just can't trust my own child, my own adolescent. I have to hide my wallet and keep all my bedroom door locked at night just in case. It's like the fear of the unknown, isn't it? And then because of that, I'm just exhausted and then depressed. So who can I turn to? And then those core beliefs now is I'm a failure as a parent. So if this is you, or you feel like this might be one of your friends, we need to let you know that there is no excuse for any type of abuse. You do not deserve it. Yes, alcohol and drugs are a catalyst, but you are not to blame. Your adolescent is the person responsible for their behaviour and violence against you. Obviously, there is no simple answer. This is very complex. Each situation can be really quite difficult on its own. So it's being able to be there in the situation to feel supported in your own unique situation. So you will need support outside your family unit. Violence towards you and your family may not be continuous. So after a violent episode, your adolescent may be resourceful and cooperative until a situation sparks another violent event, okay? Generally, verbal violence increases or changes to physical abuse over time. Do you want me to repeat that? Verbal violence increases or changes to physical abuse over time. Trust your instincts. You know if your adolescent behavior is abusive to you and if the rest of your family are at risk. Honestly, calling the police may be your first step in preventing further abuse to yourself and your family. So naming the abuse enables you and your adolescent to obtain support and assistance. Violence is a criminal offence and no one deserves to be in the position where that's being taken advantage of. Obviously, there is a huge range of counselling services that are familiar with adolescent to parent abuse, and they're all able to assist you in this situation and feel like they normalise it for you as well. Always, always, always remember, abuse thrives in silence and isolation. Okay? Awful. Please excuse me. Hang on. So, some strategies for you as a mum to help regain control and healing the relationship moving forward. Okay? Number 1, have a safety plan. If you don't know what it is, please Google it. Safety plan. There's even wonderful apps out here for a safety plan. That may mean having the police's phone number keyed into your mobile or a secret code word to a friend that you are in danger. Where can you go that makes you feel safe? It's pretty much just like a contingency of worst case scenarios and how do you protect yourself. Number 2, don't keep your adolescent's abuse a secret. Talk to the rest of your family so that you have shared response to their abusive behaviour. So it's not all on you, okay? Find out about counselling services in your area. If a counsellor doesn't provide you with the support you need, do not give up. Keep on going. Find another. There's a lot of support out there. Abusive behaviour is always a cycle. So learn to read the warning signs and remove other children to a safe space. Even have a look at the cycle of violence. The cycle of violence is essentially a clock. At the top is nice and calm and peaceful, and then quarter past is like sprinklings of anger and passive aggressive and a little bit blah 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 blah, until at the bottom there's a huge blow up, massive, right? Quarter 2 is then the apology, the love bombing, I'm really sorry, I didn't mean it, I'm sorry, I love you. And then it goes back to the top where it's peace and calm, but it never lasts, and then it'll go back to quarter past where it's passive aggressive or criticisms or blame or whatever that is, okay? Another really important option as well is to inform yourself about legal options as a parent. It's important, and as well for the child, okay? So it's important for you to learn about your legal rights and the legal rights of your child so that you are clear about the full range of options that are available to you, even if you choose not to take legal action. And these podcasts are for mums to be able to feel empowered in every single way. So if I feel completely hopeless and helpless on my own, how can I do little things to make me feel empowered? Remember, knowledge is power, and I want you to be powerful. Don't take responsibility for the abuse. Protecting your abusive child may actually contribute to an escalation of violence. So learn different ways of managing conflict for you to protect you in the heat of the moment. So this can particularly be important if your child knows exactly how to push your buttons, or may be beneficial from learning different ways to relating to your children and dealing with negative emotions. If you know about gaslighting, manipulation, I've got a podcast episode on that as well, so please listen. If you are in crisis, always call services like Parent Line, Lifeline, 1-800-RESPECT, DV Connect, DV is Domestic Violence Connect, or even Relationships Australia, because then at least you can call, even if it's not in crisis, but if you are ashamed and embarrassed, you can call anonymously, keep calling back, find someone you like, get information, feel like you can actually get it off your chest and speak to someone for the first time. If it's been going on for a little while, ask them to leave if they are violent to end the abuse. It's also important to get support for yourself at this time. It's really common for mothers to experience a range of mixed and conflicting emotions. So like relief and then guilt, and then grief, and then freedom, and then failure. You can understand exactly what that's like. So my goal strategies when working with violent adolescents and their parents, we want parental authority by instilling more confidence in parents. So you're not then led by insecurity or feeling like a failure. You need more confidence in your ability. Restoring family members' trust in one another, containing conflict and discovering strengths. Everyone has strengths. What are they? What are your strengths? How can we work as a team? How can we work as a family unit, right? Competencies of parents and adolescents, just generally through education and support so we can all try and grow together. So these now are specific types of supports to mothers, okay? I know it's a lot. We just got a couple more minutes, all right? This is also so important. If this is you or you're experiencing it, okay? Anonymous support through a phone service like Wire, WIRE, or Parent Line is a really, really good place to start. They offer a safe place to talk things through, explore options, and put you in touch with further support, especially in your area. Individual counselling can offer supportive space to explore what's happening at home, also understand intergenerational cycles, ancestral trauma and what that looks like. Different counsellors have different areas of expertise, so look for someone who has a family focus in their work. Also, family counselling, they can treat the family as a whole. So might not work though if the child is quite intimidating, because then in that kind of formal setting you might not be able to find your voice, and then it will reinforce that they are superior. Support groups, often understanding and learning from others, is a really, really fabulous situation because it normalises your situation. There is a small but growing number of support groups specifically for parents with abusive children. So you can also read about mothers' experiences of support groups in Anglicare's downloadable booklet, Adolescent Violence, Women's Stories and Courage of Hope. So that's in Anglicare's downloadable booklet online. You can also find parenting services and support through Better Health Channel or exploring resources offered by the DEECD. Isn't that awful for someone with dyslexia? Hello. So family violence services generally specialise in partner violence. However, they may be able to also offer assistance in support in understanding your situation. But honestly, call Wire on 1300 134 130 to discuss whether there is an appropriate program in your area. Parenting education teaches valuable skills such as setting boundaries and handling conflict, as well as understanding how the impacts of your own parents have on you. So look at resources specifically geared towards parenting abusive young people. It makes a huge difference. So yeah, help is always here. It's okay to fall apart. Tacos fall apart sometimes and we still love them. Okay? If you get that joke, then you're still with me. And if you're still with me, it means that this is important to you and that you still want to know all the answers. And I know this was a lot of information to digest and process, but it's really important that you know that you're not alone. And if this was really overwhelming, take a break, and then even if you need to listen to it again and write down really important points that you think are relevant to you. Also, let your friends know that they are not alone. And if you are going through it, see if you can reach out to someone. Really good friends don't judge you. We all just want to be able to support each other. Even if you do reach out and they are quite overwhelmed, you may get a little bit freaked out that they are judging, but they're not. They probably just don't understand and they don't know how to support you, and then they feel helpless. So then also guiding your friends, listen, I just need to tell you this. I don't want you to fix it for me. Can you please just listen? And then you've told them that, and then they can. So then it removes the judgment or you feeling like a burden in any way. So obviously there is no simple answer, but we need to resolve it now, okay? Abuse thrives in silence and isolation. If that's the one key thing that you take out of this, that should be the thing that motivates you to be able to reach out and get help. And if you don't feel like you can, come to me, send me a message in any way, and I will always be here to try and support you. Break the cycle of violence so it doesn't repeat when they have kids. Hey mama, You've got this. I believe in you. Everything's going to be okay. Thank you so much for listening to me. If you have been triggered or upset, please let me know. If you need more information, I'll leave a lot of resources below as well. But yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. If you're hearing this message, you've listened to the entire episode. And for that, I want to thank you for your support. I know your time is valuable, so I really